Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is John Campea, and this is a companion video. What are companion videos? Well, I'm awfully glad that you asked. See, every day on the John Campea Show, Monday through Friday, we save the second half of the show to take your live questions. However, we usually don't have enough time to get through all the live questions that get sent in, but I want to make sure those questions get answered as soon as we can, so we gather them up and we address them here on companion videos. So let's not waste any time and dive right into it, shall we? We're going to get things started off here, getting caught up with WJ3, who writes, and tipped in like $20. Thank you, WJ. Appreciate that, man, very much. Thanks for supporting the channel on that level. Hey, John, longtime fan. Thank you so much, sir. Campea Classroom time. So how will streaming services determine revenue of their movies? I guess I'm trying to say, how will the box office of a movie like Mortal Kombat be evaluated given the dual streaming / theatrical release? Okay, that's a good question. So a movie like, say, Kong vs. Godzilla, which I've already got my tickets for, and Mortal Kombat, which I cannot wait to get my tickets for, are coming out, but they're being released theatrically and they're being released on Warner Brothers, HBO Max at the same time. That is obviously going to be a big mitigating factor on how well it does at the box office. On top of that, the movie theater industry is still just in the recovery phase. Like just in LA this week, they just finally opened up the theaters to limited capacity. It's going to take a while before more people get immunized, all that kind of stuff. They're able to expand the limited capacity seating and get the word out that the theaters are open, the theaters are safe, and make people feel more comfortable coming. So box office wise, movies like King Kong and Mortal Kombat have two things working against them. Number one, they're being released online. And number two, the whole thing that it's going to take a little while for the theaters to recover. So you got to imagine in circumstances like this, that they're going to have to know that they cannot evaluate the success of the movie by box office numbers under the current circumstances. Like I'm sure they have some expectations, but they're going to be very, very adjusted expectations. Maybe before they would have thought, you know what, Mortal Kombat can make 50 million opening weekend. But under the current circumstances, we'll feel good if it can make 15. You know what I mean? And by the way, I'm not saying that's going to be the number. These are just the hypothetical numbers I'm throwing out there. But I think they're going to have much adjusted expectations, and I think they know that. So they're not going to be looking for Kong versus Godzilla to make 100 million opening weekend. They're not going to be looking for Mortal Kombat to make 50 million opening weekend. They're going to have adjusted expectations, and they're going to need to. So at least for the next while, All right, next up. Good question, WJ. Next up, War Doctor 10 writes, hey, John and crew. I think I found my new all-time favorite quote. I don't make films primarily for, oh, this is Disney. I don't make films primarily for children. I make them for the child in all of us, whether we be 6 or 60. It is a great line. It is a great line. Dude, talking about Walt Disney is always a little bit odd. There's so many wonderful, marvelous things and the legacy of Walt Disney, and there's some not so great things about Walt Disney, but that quote is fabulous. I do like that. Next up, Isaac Beebe writes, one of two. In terms of the X-Men, I would agree with you that Comcast should have gotten Fox rather than Disney. If it weren't for the fact that we already got 13 films from them, including New Mutants, the majority which are really good, why not let Marvel proper have them back so we can see what Kevin Feige can do with them and how he can incorporate them in with the rest of our beloved heroes. Same goes with Spidey and Sony if Sony were up for sale. So here's the thing about this. I have often said, now look, don't get me wrong. I am no Disney hater. I love Disney and I love Marvel and the stuff they do. I do. But I also like a lot of diversity in the type of comic book material that we're getting. And one of the great things of when Fox was still its own studio making, X-Men movies and whatever, is that they were making movies that were completely different, not necessarily better, but completely different from the Marvel movies. Had Marvel owned Fox this whole time, we never would have gotten Logan. We never would have gotten it. I think Logan is a top 3 greatest comic book film of all time. I think the 3 best comic book movies of all time are Avengers, Dark Knight, Logan. I think those are the 3 best comic book movies ever made. And we never would have got Logan. Let's just be honest. We never would have got Logan if they had been under Marvel this whole time. We never would have gotten Deadpool or Deadpool 2, obviously. We never would have gotten that. They never would have tried that. The fact that those properties belong to a different entity at the time, and I'm not sitting here saying that Marvel should spin off their characters, but they were already under somebody else's umbrella, okay? They were already out there. And because of that, we got very different types of movies. So we had Marvel making very unique kinds of movies. We had DC making their very unique kind of movies. We had Sony making their very unique kind of movies. And we had Fox. And I think there's value in the diversity. So when Fox was up for sale, the reason I was cheering for Comcast to win the bidding war wasn't because I don't love Kevin Feige or Marvel and know that Kevin Feige would do a great job with them. I know that. But it was just that I still love the idea of a different company having some of these marquee characters just to make different kinds of movies. And again, Marvel has done a great job of really mixing up I mean, they go from everything from 70s political intrigue to thriller to horror to straight up comedy to heist films. They do a really good job, but at the heart of them, there is that Kevin Feige Marvel DNA, and that's great. But it's nice to get a different flavor. You know what I mean? Again, I know Kevin Feige is going to do great with the X-Men. I know he's going to do great with the Fantastic Four. I'm just saying it's nice when it's not all homogenized, you know, and that's why I was personally at the time kind of cheering for Comcast to win the bidding war. Just me. All right, next up. The Wakandan Forever writes, when it comes to athletics, personally, I feel you should judge an athlete strictly by what they do on the field. John, you're not scared of controversy and will tell me the truth. Should Pete Rose and Chris Benoit... Oh, you cannot compare the Pete Rose situation and the Chris Benoit situation. Should Pete Rose and Chris Benoit be in the Hall of Fame? All right, so for those of you who may not know, no, you cannot compare these two situations, but Pete Rose, one of the all-time greatest baseball players of all time, but got caught in a betting scandal. He never, from what I understand, and I'm not the biggest scholar on baseball, from what I understand, he never bet against his own team. That would be cheating, but he did participate in gambling on baseball, betting on his team and things like that, and that is against the rules, naughty. But they kept him out of the Hall of Fame for it. Chris Benoit was a professional wrestler, a WWE, WWF wrestler. And was one of my favorites of all time until one day police went to his house and found that he'd murdered his wife and his son and then committed suicide. Now, from what I understand, there are extenuating circumstances. Like when they did the autopsy, if I'm remembering correctly, when they did the autopsy on Chris Benoit's brain, they said he had the brain of a 90-year-old Alzheimer's patient because of the number of knocks he took doing what he did for a living, like being a professional wrestler. They said his brain was mush, and maybe that really did affect his balance and his personality and his behavior. Maybe. I'll never know. We'll never know. But Pete Rose bet on some baseball games. Chris Benoit committed murder. And his wife and child. And so you cannot compare the two situations. Until there's some real scientific thing that like comes out and completely exonerates Chris Benoit and say it was clearly the brain damage that did it. He wasn't in control of his faculties. I don't know. But until something like that happens, no, you can't. You cannot honor a guy that murdered his wife and child. Now, I agree in principle with the idea of what did they do on the field? What did they do on the court? What did they do on the rink? But there are things that supersede that. You're murdering your wife and your child are things I think most of us would agree with superseding that. Do I believe Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame? Absolutely, he should be in the Hall of Fame. Yeah, he broke some rules. Naughty. But, I mean, he's waited a long time. He's been punished enough. He is one of the greatest baseball players of all time. He should be in the Hall of Fame. But anyway, that's just kind of my take on that. But you cannot compare the Pete Rose situation with the Chris Benoit situation. Anyway, all right, next up. No Masters writes, hey, John, I'm just here to support the channel. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you so much, No Masters. It's always nice when somebody wants to drop in just to be supportive and say something kind. Thank, man. I appreciate that. All right, next up. We got Sergeant Ward who writes, hey, John, I'm confused. Paramount Plus and Showtime are both Viacom CBS. Why don't they just show Showtime shows on Paramount Plus and slightly raise the price? Do you see this happening? Well, I mean, here's what I believe will happen for a while. Right now, we're in the wild, wild west of the streaming wars, right? All these streaming services are popping up and some companies are double dipping. I mean, hell, look at Disney. They got Disney Plus, they got Hulu, they got ESPN Plus. We've got other companies owning other things like that. Wouldn't it make sense just to bring them all under one roof? Well, here's why they may not be doing that right now. If they look at that and say, hey, we got people subscribing to Paramount Plus and to Showtime, we're double dipping. We're getting double the revenue. So there is that. I do think, however, that once the Wild West phase of streaming passes, however many years that's going to take, we will enter into a amalgamation sort of phase where I believe we're going to see there is coming a day when Hulu and Disney Plus will not be two separate things. You know, internationally, you know, the version of Hulu internationally is now Star, and Star is just included in with Disney Plus in a lot of places. I believe a day is coming, whether it's next year or in 2 years or in 3 years or whatever, where Hulu will just be a new section under Disney Plus, just like Marvel is a section and Star Wars is a section and National Geographic is a section and Pixar is a section. They're going to have the Hulu section. I think it's going to be, I think we will enter into a phase of amalgamation. And something like Paramount Plus, if they do own other entities like a Showtime or whatever, that makes sense to me, but I don't think we're going to see it anytime immediately soon. But I do think that time is coming. So great observation, man. All right, next up. Jonathan writes, do you think the Snyder Cut rewards toxic fandom, as some sites claim? Or can it be said that studios should listen to their audience? Eager to see your take on this. Well, I mean, no, I've read different takes on it. Vanity Fair wrote an interesting article about it. That basically, the writer at Vanity Fair of this particular article, and you guys can go look it up yourself. She was basically making the point, say, hey, look, I have been the target, she said, of these toxic Snyderians telling me that I should kill myself, that they're going to find out where I live, and I've had to forward their information on to police, that all this kind of stuff. And by Warner Brothers moving forward with the Snyder Cut, it's rewarding that behavior. One of the things I said on my show this morning was, you have to understand that every fandom, I don't care if it's Marvel fandom or DC fandom or Bridgerton fandom or Downton Abbey fandom or Star Wars fandom, every fandom has morons in it. Everyone does. Every single fandom does. So you got to make the argument that you cannot let a few bad apples spoil the whole thing. It's also not just a matter of listening to their fans. That's not why Warner Brothers is releasing Snyder Cut on HBO Max. They're releasing it the same reason why a lot of studios do special things, because they're going to use the fans. And don't get mad at Warner Brothers. Disney does it. Paramount does it. Sony, they all do it. Warner Brothers looked at the Snyder Cut, released the Snyder Cut fandom base, and they said, we can use them. We're having a hard time getting attention to our HBO Max platform. Let's use these people and get some bump and buzz for our thing. And again, don't think badly of Warner Brothers for that. They all do it. Oh, they all do it. Believe that. Anybody who tells you otherwise is trying to sell you something. A little bit of a Princess Bride thing there for you. They all do it. So look, at the end of the day, it's business. If you are a car company, you are going to make cars that you think can sell and make you some shekels. That's what you do. If you make jeans, you're going to make jeans if you think you can identify a demographic, or as you know, in the one movie they say, the business exec in the one movie says, where they call demographic suckers. If they can identify some suckers that will buy these purple jeans, if we make these purple jeans, then you make the purple jeans. If Disney identifies, you know what? If we take some of our MCU stuff and put it on Disney Plus, we're going to get a lot of these suckers, customers, signing up for Disney Plus to watch these shows there. And that's business. And if Warner Brothers said, you know what, we're having a hard time getting attention to our HBO Max platform, which they are. And there's these people making all sorts of noise and making themselves very visible. Can we leverage that? Can we take advantage of that? And let's do something. And there's nothing wrong with that. So no, I don't believe that going ahead and putting the Snyder Cut on HBO Max, which, you know, I've said for a long time is what I thought they should do. I don't think them putting on HBO Max is either them listening to the fans, nor do I think it's them rewarding bad behavior. It's business. What is the key to any business? Identify need and come up with something to meet that need. Identify a desire and come up with something that can satisfy that desire. And if Warner Brothers stood back and said, hey, there's this collection of people in the demographic that are calling for this, we need attention HBO Max, put it together and make it. So no, I don't think it was enabling bad behavior, nor do I think it was listening to the fans. It was business, and they all do it. And honestly, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but that's just me. All right, next up. Black Frost writes, sorry, I meant Golden Globe. Now, yeah, I was going to say, because you mentioned Oscar, but I knew you were talking about a TV show anyway. I meant Golden Globe nom for your honor, not Oscar. I know Golden Globes don't mean much, but deserves recognition. Well, the show, Your Honor, may deserve recognition. The Golden Globes do not. The Golden Globes are a total waste of time and joke. I know there are a lot of people who disagree with me on that, and that's cool. It's just my personal opinion. I think they're completely useless, but that's just me. All right, but Paul Star Guy writes, FYI, the Seti Institute has a show called Grudge Report. I think I've heard of this on their YouTube channel that discusses the science of sci-fi shows. Star Trek Discovery Season 3 and Expanse Season 5 just got done. And just started Expanse Season 4 and Stargate SG-1. Nice. Top shows of each of the 10 seasons as voted by the fans. That's a neat idea. I've seen like various videos on YouTube of like Neil deGrasse like talking about the science of a certain movie or whatever. Now look, I don't need my sci-fi to be scientifically accurate. I watch my sci-fi for great stories that, you know, make the imagination, you know, flourish, not necessarily for scientific accuracy. But if you can do both at the same time, big win. And so I do appreciate that shows like that exist, Paul. So thanks for pointing that one out. All right, next up, we've got Kara Black writes, let's be real here, John. Endgame will get a re-release here in the US or elsewhere within the next year or two and take back the #1 spot, smashing Avatar's so-called victory this weekend. This isn't over by a long shot. Oh, no doubt. There's absolutely no doubt about that, Kara. I have been saying ever since Endgame did its first, don't forget Endgame had a re-release as well, but ever since Endgame took the record, I said, since it only beat Avatar by like $7 million, I said for the longest time, you've all heard me say it a million times, at some point Disney will re-release Avatar, so it will take back the #1 spot, and they'll use that to help market and promote, you know, Avatar 2 is coming, you know, the follow-up to the #1 all-time box office film. But then make no mistake, Disney will then also re-release Avengers Endgame at some point, assuming that, you know, Avatar overtakes, you know, I'm not even quite sure. Actually, let me look this up for a second. Let me look this up. I'm looking at for Avatar box office. Okay, let's go over here and check it out. So Avatar's box office right now is $2.79 billion. $2.79 billion. Endgame is, oh no, that's got to be an old number. So 2.79 billion is the old number. Avatar's all-time box office, they haven't updated it yet. Okay, so at any rate, it was only behind Endgame by a little bit. I don't know how much ahead of Endgame it is now. It can't be by much. It's probably also just a little bit. So yes, there will be this game of hopscotch that Avatar and Endgame are going to be playing with each other for years. They're going to play this game for years. And I don't know a third movie that's going to come up and beat it. I don't see a movie beating either Avatar or Endgame anytime soon. But you're absolutely right, Kara. They are going to be playing this game of hopscotch for a good long time to come. They're going to be playing this game of hopscotch for a good long time to come. All right, next up. Jonathan writes, Eminem is known for his controversial and explicit lyrics. Stephen King is known for his macabre, gory, and dark writing. Both are goats of their art, and I think both have skirted controversy. Which director is like a King or an Eminem? Tarantino? Maybe. I mean, Tarantino to me, and this is up for debate, but Tarantino to me is a top 10 director of all time. That's just to me. My one knock against Tarantino has always been, even though the only movie of his that I straight up don't like is Death Proof. That is literally, out of all of his movies, that is the only one I just don't like. Most of his movies I consider bloody brilliant. But the one knock I've always had personally against Tarantino is the fact that when you're watching a Tarantino movie, you know immediately you're watching a Tarantino movie. It takes you 2 minutes to know this is a Tarantino movie. He's got that exact same DNA all over it, the exact same dialogue style, and one could make an argument that's a strength. And whatever, the end result is his movies are, other than the odd one or two, are mostly all brilliant. They're fantastic. I like my filmmakers to be able to have a little bit more diversity. You know what I mean? So again, you look at a Steven Spielberg, he can do period piece, he can do sci-fi, action, adventure, romance, biopic, you name it. He can do it. He can do anything. And you never really know that you're watching. I remember my buddy finished watching Ready Player One. My buddy watched Ready Player One and like were shocked when I told them that Steven Spielberg directed. They never would have known. You'll always know if you're watching a Tarantino movie. And I'd like to see him diversify that up a bit. So I don't know, like in that kind of an analogy, maybe Tarantino's a good fit for it. I'd have to think about it longer, but maybe Tarantino's not a bad fit for a description like that. All right, next up, we've got Ryan Lohner, who writes, thanks to the new CDC guidelines, I just hugged my grandmother for the first time in a year. That's awesome. She fully recovered from a stroke at 90, and now she's fully vaccinated at 94. The woman will outlive us all. Dude, that's awesome. You know what that reminds me of? First of all, Ryan, it's love hearing cool little stories like that. Thank you for sharing that. I nearly broke into tears the other day. I saw this story, and it reminds me of your grandma. But I saw this story going around, and it was verified it was true. There was like this 87-year-old woman, right, who was in the hospital. She had COVID. And she refused to be put, the hospital, everybody knew the hospitals were running short on ventilators. Remember, they were running short on beds, on rooms, on ventilators. This 87-year-old woman was like first in line. I mean, she's the case study for who gets the ventilator first. And this 97-year-old woman, or 87-year-old woman, I might be off on the age a bit. If you guys know the exact story I'm talking about, can you share the link? Because I'm sure I'm probably messing up a couple of the details. But the general gist of it is this. This old grandma, basically, when the doctors told her they were going to put her on a ventilator, she looked at them and basically said, no. She's like, look, I don't want to die, but I'm my age and I have had a great life. There are other people here who need this and have more in front of them than I do. You go and give this ventilator, whatever ventilator you were going to give to me, you go and give to somebody who maybe has more ahead of them than I do. And I'll fight, but if I die, I die. I've had a great life. And I remember I was a freaking mess. I'm sitting there in front of my television. It was on some random YouTube video that I was watching. And this came over me and my chin started to quiver. And you know how there's that scene in Lord of the Rings, Return of the King, after they've won the battle and the king of Gondor is walking through, Strider's walking through, he's now king, and he comes to the hobbits, and the hobbits get ready to bow, and the king says, my friends, you bow to no one. And then the king gets down and takes a knee, and everybody else, I get chills thinking about that scene, and everybody else takes a knee to these hobbits. I'm listening to this story of this old woman doing that, and I physically felt the urge to get out of my sofa and take a knee, because that lady is an OG. That lady is a fucking boss. I can almost hear her voice in Drago's voice, like, and not instead of if he died, no, if I die, I die, you know? And I just like, you so rarely hear stories of that sort of selflessness, especially when she's the first one that should be getting a ventilator. She's the first one. The most vulnerable among us should be the first ones to get it. She should be getting it first. And the fact that and I don't care if she was an 87-year-old woman, a 42-year-old man, doesn't matter. The fact that they go, you know what? I've had it good. There are people here maybe have mistakes to fix. They have a good life in front of them. I want you to take this respirator. I'm going to try to live. I'm going to fight. But you take that respirator and you give it to somebody else. And I swear to fucking God, I wanted to take a knee. I wanted to take a knee, even though she wasn't actually there in the room with me. I'm getting verklempt. I'm getting choked up just thinking about it. And anyway, I know that's not your grandmother, Ryan, but you just telling that story of your grandmother fighting off freaking stroke, a pandemic, getting vaccinated in 94. Good on her, man. Good on her. These OGs. Hell, anyway. Thanks for sharing that, Ryan. Next up, we need some good news these days. We need some good stories. All right, Tommy Oliver writes, John, I don't know when it airs, but please do a Dexter after show. I watched the series for the first time last year, and I loved it. I love Dexter. Love Dexter. Final season was a little shaky. It's very, very hard for good shows to stick the landing. But that, as overall as a series, that show ruled. Top 5 shows for me, easy. The novels are worth checking out for those who need their Dexter fix. Hashtag stay filthy. Yeah, I probably won't be doing an after show for Dexter, just being honest. I mean, look, for us to do an after show for a spoiler discussion show, there has to be a critical number of people who watch it for it to be worth our time to, to set aside another couple of hours in a weeknight that I should be spending with my wife or whatever. There's got to be a critical number. And as great as Dexter is, and I'll be watching it, I honestly don't think enough people will be watching it to justify us doing an after show for it. But I don't know. Let's see as we get closer. Maybe it'll be the number one trending thing in the world before the release, and maybe we do it. But I'll be honest with you right now, Tommy, I probably won't, but I'll be watching it. I'll be watching it. All right, next up. Michael H. Jones writes, and tipped in like $20. Thank you, Michael, for supporting the channel on that level, man. Hey, John. Today I went to my AMC theater and saw The Father. I've heard that's great. An excellent movie, although I do agree with you that they should not have Oscars this year. For what it's worth, Nomadland, which is brilliant, and The Father are two of the best films I've seen this year. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people have been asking me why I haven't been covering the Oscar nominations. I mean, it's well known. You guys know what a big deal I make out of the Oscars every single year. It is my second favorite day of the year besides Christmas. I enjoy it more than my own birthday, even though quite often the Oscars and my birthday quite often fall on the same day. But I am not interested in the Oscars this year. I don't think they should be holding an Oscars this year. To me, this is an asterisk year. Now, I know there are many of you who disagree with me, and I respect that, but that's how I feel about it. And so I really don't think there should be an Oscars this year. I think they should just be all pushed to next year and have all the films that were eligible this year also be eligible next year. But that's just my take. You don't have to agree with me. It's all good. It's all good. We're all friends here. And so I'll just be straight up honest. I just straight up have no desire to talk about the Oscar nominations. I just don't. And there are some great films nominated, some great performances nominated. I mean, Husavik from the Will Ferrell, Rachel McAdams movie. I can't remember the name, but where they're the Norwegian singers. I love that song. I was very, very happy for them that they got nominated for Best Song. But honestly, I'm really not all that interested in it myself. So, but that's just me. But Nomadland is, listen, if you're curious about how Eternals is going to turn out, Chloe, who is directing and she's finished directing Eternals, directed Nomadland. She's probably going to win Best Picture this year. She's probably going to win Best Director this year. That's the lady directing Eternals for Marvel. It's a lot to look forward to. All right. Thanks for writing that in, Michael. Next up, Peter Nipemi writes, hope I pronounced your name right, Peter. If Gates or Bezos' son would make a movie and dad would make a deal with a cinema to show the movie and put a price of $1 billion for one ticket and buys 4, would that movie become the highest grossing movie of all time with a box office of $4 billion? Yes. Yeah, it would. Technically speaking, yes, they would. Now, here's the thing. That's not how movie theaters price their tickets. It would have to clear a lot of the standards that they do. So I don't even know if that's possible that sort of hypothetical could happen. But let's go with the hypothetical. Theoretically speaking, you know, my friend always used to say there's 2 ways to make $1 million. Sell 1 million things for $1 or sell one thing for $1 million. And that's kind of true. That applies here. Theoretically speaking, if a movie theater chain agreed to sell tickets for this one movie and all tickets for that movie cost $1 billion, and then Bezos or some other rich guy bought 4 tickets to their son's movie, then yes, that son's movie becomes the #1 box office film of all time. Again, there are so many asterisks beside that. It's a situation that actually couldn't happen. But if we want to play the hypotheticals, yeah, hypothetically, that could happen. All right, next up. Shane Roxas writes, "Hey, John. I've heard other viewers suggest it before, but you need to check out, many people have recommended this to me, Auntie Donna's Big Old House of Fun on Netflix. They also have a ton of YouTube content. If nothing else, go watch the Ellen sketch on YouTube. Absolutely hilarious." You know, I will do that, Shane. I have had a lot of people recommending this Auntie Donna's Big Old House of Fun. And I think even Robert has watched it and told me that it's something that I need to get on and finally watch. So I tell you what, Shane, I will get on that. Maybe not today, but I will get on that. I will put it on my priority list to do that. Thank you for the additional recommendation on that. All right, next up, Sam Fisher writes, "Saw movie trailers, John." I'm assuming that you mean my documentary Movie Trailers a Love Story. Thank you for that, Sam. "And I really liked it, but I was expecting it to be narrated by the dulcet tones of Giovanni Campea. Also, there is psych behind reactions. There's a mirroring effect, and you feel like you're watching it again for the first time." Oh yeah, there's definitely psychology behind. Now, in my Movie Trailers a Love Story, it's broken into chapters. And one of the chapters is dedicated to the whole movement of trailer reactions and how that all became a thing. And we talk about trailer reactions and why they exist and why people enjoy them and, you know, some of the knocks against them and all that kind of stuff. And you're right. There is absolutely a psychology behind it. There 100% is. And, you know, I think Greg Alba, who is one of the guys in Real Rejects, he's one of the guys we interviewed for it. He put it really good. He goes, you know, you just feel like you're there watching it with that person when you're watching a trailer reaction. And you want to see their reaction to it. You want to feel their energy, especially if it gets in line with yours. And it's definitely a piece. And no, I didn't narrate my own movie. I don't have a narrator's voice, and I found a fantastic guy who's got a great narration voice. I was very thrilled with him, and he did my narration. And I'm personally very, very happy with the way that turned out. Anyway, thanks for the kind words, Sam. All right, next up, we've got Steve Pintor, who tips in like $50. Thank you, Steve, for supporting our channel that level, man. Really appreciate that, man. "Wow, Campea, you have a beautiful new home. I couldn't be more happy for you and Ann. Makes me want to be in YouTube." Just kidding. I know that's not how it works. "I wish you guys nothing but success. P.S. Don't think we didn't notice what was on your table." I have no idea what you're talking about. LOL, cheers to you. Yep, no idea what you're talking about. So for those of you who might have missed it, what Steve Pintor is talking about is, you know, Ann and I bought our first house. And we moved in a little over a month ago, probably about a month and a half ago now. We moved into our new house. It's our first house that we've ever owned. Now, we had to do it economically because we couldn't afford to have a decent house in LA. It's just too expensive. If we didn't want to live in a neighborhood we didn't want to live in, if we didn't buy a house that we didn't really want, if we wanted anything over 700 square feet, we had to move out. And so we moved about an hour outside of LA to Riverside, California. It's actually quite beautiful out here. And we're only about an hour away. When there's stuff in LA going on, I can just hop in the car and be there pretty quick. And instead of getting a house that was totally ready, we saved even more money by buying a house that we loved the neighborhood and we loved the location and we loved a lot of things about where the house was, but maybe the house needed a lot of work. And we saved a lot of money by buying this house and then just completely renovating it. Like, we just did a gut job on the house and completely renovated it. I mean, for example, this was the garage. This was a dirty, filthy, terrible shaped garage. And now it is this. It is if I do say so myself, it's a beautiful studio. We redid the kitchen, the living room, all the bedrooms, Anne's office. We redid, the laundry. We redid the backyard, put in a new deck, and got the pool cleaned and all that kind of stuff. And at the end of the day, we saved so much money. We were able to do it very, very economically. I guess that's what happens when you watch a lot of HGTV. You just realize, get a fixer-upper, and away you go. But yeah, and so anyway, a lot of people since we moved had been asking for a house tour. So if you are interested, we did put up on the page, it's on the front page of the YouTube channel. We did put up a tour of the house. It's not like some 4,000 square foot monstrosity of a house, but we put up a tour of the house. We're very proud of the house. It's very comfortable. It's very peaceful. It's very zen. And we love living here. And we couldn't be happier. And thank you so much for the well wishes, Steve. I really appreciate that, man. And again, thank you for supporting our channel on that level. All right. Doobie Brother writes, "Hey, John, hope you're having a lovely day." I am having a lovely day. Thank you. Congrats on the new place. How often do you get stoned? Again, I am sure I have no idea what you're talking about. To be honest, I don't get stoned. I mean, I may, partake of the odd thing here and there, and may come home from the dispensary and maybe bring me a pen or something like that. I might have a little edible now and again, sort of thing. But otherwise, I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about, Doobie Brother. I'm sure I don't know what you're talking about. All right, Michael Bradley writes, "Hello, John. Can't wait for your Snyder Cut review, whether it's good or bad review. I know you'll be honest and unbiased." Well, we're doing our full open spoiler review tomorrow. Tomorrow at 6 o'clock. I might move it a little bit later so people have another hour or two to finish watching Snyder Cut. I was going to do it at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's LA time tomorrow. Maybe I'll move that to 7 or something like that. Maybe 8. I don't know. We'll see. But look, I can just tell you right now, it's good. It's good. I think it is the second best Snyder movie besides Man of Steel. I mean, at least Snyder DCU movie. I don't think it's as good as Man of Steel, which I think is, one of the best comic book films of all time. I don't think it's as good as like 300, but if we're just talking DC, I think it's you guys know me. I really like Batman versus Superman. I think it's better than Batman versus Superman. So that's just my take, but we will talk more in depth about it on the open spoiler discussion tomorrow. Thanks for that, Michael. And looking forward to seeing you there. All right, next up, Captain Doofus writes, "Hey, Gio, been a fan since AMC, but I have a bone to pick with you." Uh-oh, here we go. "In all those years, you constantly mention good Canadian kids, yet no mention of the not so Canadian kids. Justin Bieber, Nickelback. Nickelback's great. What are you talking about?" If you guys have been watching the show for a while, you know what that means. Anyway, "I only want to hear a boot, Bret Hart, and Celine Dion." Well, hey, listen, it's funny. I can't remember the exact details, but I think it was back at the Winter Olympics, maybe 7 years ago. I can't remember exactly. But I believe it was Canada versus the U.S. for the gold medal. And I think that's the one where Sidney Crosby scored in overtime to win the gold medal for Canada. But yeah, I think it was the U.S. and Canada were in the gold medal game. And I remember somebody in the U.S. team before the game put out on social media, like pretty funny, says, "The loser has to take Justin Bieber." Of course, Justin Bieber is Canadian, but he lives in the U.S. So this American player put out, "Loser has to take Justin Bieber." And a Canadian player, I can't remember which one, fired back, "You broke him, you keep him." Like, when Justin Bieber left Canada, he was a good Canadian kid. Like, you broke him, you keep him. By the way, I shouldn't say that too out loud. My wife is actually a big fan of Justin Bieber, so. Oh, the kids tell, I don't know anything about Justin Bieber. All I know is this. When me and my buddies went just before the pandemic hit, we went and got a private box seat for LA Kings game. It's surprisingly cheap. Not a lot of people in LA go to hockey. So we got the private VIP box seat because the Kings were playing the Maple Leafs. And in the private box next to us just happened to be Justin Bieber. And he was wearing, I got to say, I started to develop a bit of love for Bieber because he was donning the big Maple Leaf jersey. I'm like, that's a good kid. That's a good kid right there. Other than that, I really don't know anything about Justin Bieber, but he was rocking a really great Maple Leafs jersey. All right, next up, Logan James Kynaston writes, I recently watched Bring Out the Dead, and that's the Nicolas Cage movie, and I couldn't believe it was one of Scorsese's. Martin Scorsese directed that. It was unlike anything I've ever seen from him. I love his range from Goodfellas to King of Comedy to Silence. Silence is an underrated film, and even Hugo, which I believe got a Best Picture nomination, if I'm not mistaken. He's my personal favorite director. Yeah, Bring Out the Dead, Nicolas Cage, I think Patricia Arquette, Ving Rhames, John Goodman's in it too, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to admit, not one of my favorite Martin Scorsese movies, but you are right. There's a Spielbergian kind of thing to Scorsese as well. Scorsese, who is known for one kind of movie, but really when you look at his work, he is a lot, maybe not to the same extreme as Spielberg, but he's a lot like Spielberg in the sense that he can be very diverse. He can tell different kinds of stories. And this one with Cage is definitely ranks right up there amongst the different kinds of films. But you're right. When you look at a movie like Hugo, like just hold up like Goodfellas and Hugo, you'd never guess those two movies were made by the same director. You'd never guess. Like if you didn't know better. And Bring Out the Dead is definitely one that falls into that category as well, man. So that's a good observation, Logan. All right. Optimus Prime Rib writes, we hear of some movies being so bad they're good. But what about a movie that's so good it's bad? Oh, I can't think of one of those. What exactly would cause that to happen? I don't think it ever has. If a movie's badness can make it entertaining, how would a movie's goodness take away from it? Random thought. I really don't know that it can. I mean, look, at the end of the day, movies, one of the things that I always say about movies is that they are experiential events, right? Movies are meant to be experiential events. And if sometimes a movie is so bad in what it's doing, it gives you an enjoyable experience. The best example of that is Vanilla Ice's movie, Cool as Ice, also starring Michael Gross from Family Ties. It's just the best example I can think of in the world of a movie that's so bad, it actually creates an experience so you have a really good time watching it, even though it's horrible. If a movie's good, that means it's delivering that experience. So I can't think of a movie that's so good, it's bad. You know what I mean? I just can't think of one, and I can't think off the top. I mean, it's an excellent question, Optimus Prime Red, but I just can't think of a scenario that would cause that to happen. If you guys can think of one, jump down into the comments section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. All right, next up, we've got Jonathan writes, random question. Have you ever had Filipino food? Dude, I'm married to a Filipino. I have had Filipino. I will admit, though, I'm not a big fan of Filipino food, except for a couple of dishes. I'll talk about that in a second. If so, which ones? If you don't know the name, try to describe it. If no, why not? No, I'm not a big fan, but there are a couple of things. Like hala hala, I'm not big on hala hala. Like Ray and Ann get all happy for hala hala, but not me. But there are a couple things that I really like. One, my brother-in-law Ray makes, and I really love it. Actually, my mother-in-law makes it too. Ann's mom makes it too, and I love it. And it's just like, you'd think it's some kid home alone by themselves, some 13-year-old kid home alone, so they just make something together. But it's spaghetti with a very, very sweet kind of tomato sauce, like a very sweet tomato sauce with chopped up hot dogs in it and something else. And I'll tell you, as ridiculous as that sounds, it is really delicious. On top of that, there's a Filipino restaurant in Glendale called Fiesta de Barrio, or Barrio de Fiesta, one of the two. Fiesta de Barrio, let's go with that. And they have a pork adobo dish that is so good. Pork adobo with garlic fried rice. It is stupid. My father-in-law, who just passed away a couple years ago, Ann's dad, he used to make a great chicken adobo as well. And lumpia. I'm very, very big on lumpia. I love lumpia. Actually, we'll even make lumpia at home sometimes. But that's literally every Filipino dish I actually really like. When I go to Ann's like big family get-togethers, I love them, but I usually can't eat a lot of the food. But you know, I have a very, very vanilla palate. I fully admit it. I have a very, very vanilla palate. And so Yeah, I'm not really big on it. But those dishes I just mentioned, I completely, completely love. All right, next up. Jonathan also writes, during the pandemic and lockdown, shouldn't animated movies flourish? I mean, all the animation can be done remotely along with voice acting. Am I right or wrong about this? I mean, theoretically, yes. Theoretically. But you know, here's the thing, like a lot of animation houses, they're just so used to having team environments where the one artist is doing things directly connected to what the next artist is doing. Now, theoretically, you're right. Each artist should be able to do that stuff remotely, but it's such a different working culture that way. Not to mention, besides the animation, a regular movie development process has to go into play here. Script development, you know, which can take a long time. Then storyboarding it out, doing pre-production, all that kind of, I mean, there's probably a lot of movies, like just because we were in a pandemic doesn't mean they can just start cranking out movies. Like everything still takes a lot of time. But theoretically speaking, you could probably get more work done on an animated film than you could otherwise because you don't need a set with 40 or 400 people on set. So theoretically speaking, yeah. But again, it still takes a very, very, very long time to make these things. So it's not like, oh, the pandemic happened, we have 55 new animated movies, because there's more to it than that. But in theory, Jonathan, yeah, you're right. It should be easier. All right. Final question of the day comes to us from Jonathan, who also writes, I have no problem with Black Superman. I do have a problem with gender swapping / color change. Well, you just said you have no problem with Black Superman. That would be a color change. Anyway, if Hollywood wants diversity, they should create original characters of different ethnicities / genders, starting with Filipinos. Come on. I want to see a Filipino superhero. Your thoughts? Where there is in Marvel Comics right now. There is, I believe it's in Marvel Comics, or it might be DC. But anyway, there's a Filipino superhero right now. I think she's called, not Typhoon, like some weather kind of name. I don't think she's a weather superhero, but she's got like some kind of weather name. Anyway, there is a Filipino female superhero out there right now. Here's the thing, and this is what it comes down to for me. You have to give me a solid, 100% rock solid, important reason why it should not happen. Why it is important that it not happen. I have yet to ever hear one legitimate argument about why it is vital and important that you not do a Black Superman. Why? What's the drawback? If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Now, if I was a producer, would I make a Superman movie with a Black Superman? I'm a little bit more of a traditionalist, so I probably wouldn't, but I can't think of a single reason why you can't. What is a single reason why it is vital and important that they not do that? I've never heard one legitimate argument. Not one. All I've ever heard is like, well, that's just not the Superman I grew up with. Really? Because the Superman you grew up with was Christopher Reeve. So unless it's Christopher Reeve, you shouldn't watch any Superman. That's just kind of my take on it. Or the gender swapping thing. Guess what? Battlestar Galactica is the greatest television show of all time. That's a subjective opinion, of course, but it's mine, so I'll say it. Battlestar Galactica is the greatest show of all time. And guess what? They made Starbuck a woman. And they made Boomer a woman. But it's Starbuck in particular, one of the greatest characters in that show. And it totally worked. And there was a whole bunch of people, I still remember, that cried and cried and cried when they made Starbuck. Richard Hatch was a man. And they cried and cried and cried. And it's like, hey, I get it. If I was remaking Battlestar Galactica at the time, I probably would have made Starbuck a guy. But they didn't. They made her a woman. And she turned out to be one of the greatest characters on that show. And nobody cried anymore. Nobody complained. After that first season, I never heard anybody complaining about it. Why? Because winning cures everything. The point is, clearly, it wasn't important and vital that Starbuck must remain a guy. Because if that were true, then the show wouldn't have worked. But it did. And the character of Starbuck in that series is one of the reasons why it worked so well. If it was vital and important that that character be male, it wouldn't have worked. And so clearly it wasn't that vital and it wasn't that important that they not change their gender. And again, I wouldn't have changed the gender. But there's no reason why they can't. There's no reason why they can't. And again, it all comes down to, does it work? And if J.J. Abrams, and we don't even know for a fact that J.J. Abrams is doing a Black Superman movie, but if he is, okay, let's see if it's good. If it's good, we have nothing to complain about. And if it's bad, well, there are other bad movies that people didn't like. It isn't because the characters were... So again, I just think the onus, whenever there's a suggestion about trying something different with a character, the onus is on the people who are against it. The onus is on you to present why it is absolutely vital and tremendously important that that character be Asian, or that character be white, or that character be male, or that character be female. It's not the responsibility of the artists whose job it is to try different things, explore different avenues and ways of telling stories. It's not their responsibility to prove to you why we have to make Superman black. The onus is on you to prove why he must not be black. And again, just me personally, I've not heard a good reason why not to. Again, it's not what I would do personally, but I can't think of any reason why somebody else can't try it. And if it works, great. We've got another female Starbuck situation. And if it doesn't, oh well. The next people to make Superman will probably make him white again. Not that every white Superman movie has worked, has it? I mean, I personally like the Superman Returns, but a lot of people didn't like it. And they had the stereotypical white Christopher Reeve looking dude. I really like Brandon Routh, by the way. And a lot of people didn't like that movie. But he was white. It should have worked, shouldn't it? Anyway, that's just kind of my take on it. It's all depends on where does the onus lie. And that's where I think the onus lies. That's just me personally. So, and by the way, I'm not saying you need to agree with me. That's just my thoughts. That's how I view it. And but you did ask me, so I gave you my answer. All right, guys, listen. That's all the time we have for today for this installment of the companion video. We will pick back up with your questions on the John Campea Show tomorrow. I'm looking forward to having you guys here. In the meantime, guys, please remember to do the four main things. Stay smart, stay safe, take care of yourselves, and please take care of the people around you. That'll do it for me. That'll do it for me for now, guys. Thanks a lot for being here. My name's John Campea, and until next time, my friends, bye-bye.